I think that this is going to be an experience exactly like when they came to PPTA waiting.
ACT is the most extreme, preying on those people.
Our job is to make sure that we're showing New Zealanders that there is an alternative to the divisive approach of this government, that you can bring people together.
We've got to constantly look at how we can build our city better.
Is a state secret recipe.
In 18 months, there were 15 major attacks that had been made on workers.
Yes, there he was, my woodwork teacher back in the day, Mr. Brownlee at Ellesmere College. So he actually gave me the cane once.
We've seen some stuff in the media around how those who work in infrastructure are starting to go overseas because they can't get guarantees around the transformational projects here in New Zealand. At least Wellington, we can provide that certainty.
And that's one of our major concerns, is it's a step towards greater privatisation of our public education system.
It's kind of sad that because of this government's political choices, it's manufactured an exodus of some of the best and brightest among us.
They need to reflect that councils aren't elected or appointed by the government of the day. They're elected by the same communities that put government in place. We're elected just like central government.
Here is somebody who is ideologically based rather than purpose-based.
Welcome to this week's news. Hello there. I just got a notification on my phone from YouTube. I'm like, oh no, we're live. Yeah, that tracks. We're live.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it's working. The technology is working.
It's been a very interesting week for me. I was very shocked to learn when I was watching Ballot this week that I was partially the topic of a dispute.
Yeah,
my question came out.
A lot actually watching Sam's show. It is a propensity for local government candidates to go, you know what, I agree, but no, on a lot of stuff. And the disabled toilets was one, which was the conversation that your name got brought up in. Same with things like tactiles on the road. There's a lot of, yep, I agree. And Māori wards, generally with extreme right-wing candidates, it's like, I agree with them because the people are nice, but no.
The one thing I learned very quickly is the ACT guy Nigel doesn't like me.
Oh, well.
Yes.
Yeah. Take that as a badge of honour. You should try having half of the candidates in Northland not liking you. That's what I'm dealing with this week. Speaking of this week, we have an action-packed, full-on, almost 90-minute show lined up this week.
Yes.
It is huge. So I think the first thing that we should do is bring Chris in, who is waiting very patiently in the green room, and we can have a talk about the strike, which is what the poll is about on the YouTube page this week. Is a 1% pay rise fair when the CPI is sitting at 2.7%?
And I just very briefly, I did attempt to ask for Erica Stanford. She did not respond to our emails. But Here is Chris Abercrombie from the PPTA.
Right. Kia ora, Chris.
Kia ora. Hello.
How's the feet? How's the sign waving arms? Everything
pretty good.
Okay?
Good. Members are in good spirits. I was with some today, so that was really good. And it's nothing like a good protest to sort of get your spirits up.
Can you give us a rundown as to why the protest is happening? I mean, easy enough to understand the 1% pay rise thing. I don't think anybody out there would want a 1% pay rise alone by itself when everything is so expensive. But can you give us an overall picture, particularly from your perspective, from the PPTA's perspective?
Yeah, so the 1% obviously is the headline. It's easy to understand, and as you say, it's effectively going backwards, in pay. So in theory, at the end of the term, which will be most likely 3 years, you'd be earning less than at the start. So in real terms, so that's not, no one's going to accept that. But also there's a whole heap of other stuff that wasn't addressed by the government. So we're really concerned about pastoral care. We often talk about the unmet need in education at the moment, and one of that is that our young people are leading incredibly complex lives. There's mental health concerns, there's anxiety, there's increase in neurodiversity, and we're recognizing it more and more, and just specific learning needs. And that's falling more and more on schools to deal with, because as we all know, the community resource, the community health, community is being stretched or non-existent in lots of communities. So we're asking for more time in schools for teachers or deans or guidance counsellors to support that mahi more, so teachers in the classroom don't have to, so they can focus on the teaching and learning. One of the other big ones, obviously, professional development. We've got significant curriculum change, we've got significant assessment change. At some point in the next few years, teachers are going to be teaching old curriculum, old assessment, new assessment, all at the same time. And so we really just want to make sure that we're getting the support we need. And there's nothing better than teacher-led PLD. So we want to continue that. We had a victory last time to keep this professional development fund controlled by teachers, for teachers, and we want that to carry on. But we also want an individual allowance for professional development, so teachers can decide what's best for them and their professional development, because we are hearing just crying out for curriculum-specific PLD. So, I'm a history teacher, I'd go to a history teacher professional development and, learn about how to be a better history teacher and so forth. So we're just crying out for that. And at the end of the day, it's about recruitment and retention. That's pay and conditions, because there's no guarantee there's going to be a subject specialist teacher in front of those high school kids on Monday, and that's not good enough. And if we have a government that wants more subject-specific subjects, we want subjects. You need to have a subject expert to deliver it. So we just don't have that at the moment.
This government has rolled out a whole bunch of changes to the curriculum. There was the focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. There's been rush jobs on English literacy and things like that. The changes to the curriculum that way, led by the always racist when she can, Elizabeth Rata. Is there a sense within the industry at the moment of just too much being thrown at you guys all at once?
One of the things I hear the most, I visit schools all the time. It's a really great part of this role, and talk to teachers. And what I hear the most is they're sick of the pillar to post change. They want consistency. They want a clear runway, to actually implement change before it's changed again. And educational reform is not a quick process. We're at a high school, so if you think of an intervention in a 5-year-old, it's 10 years before we see the benefit of that intervention. So you've got to be doing educational reform on a 10-year time frame, and not 3-year knee-jerk reactions to whatever study you've just all of a sudden read.
Well, got ChatGPT to put together for you.
Well, apparently they've been using AI to help with some of the curriculum development, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
On that topic, actually, and as a complete aside to everything, as a teacher, how much are you seeing stuff from ChatGPT come through?
All the time. And it's another topic of conversation. You've got the NZQA and the minister saying, AI marking, and we've had students that have been really clear saying, actually, I like my teacher marking my work and giving me feedback. That relationship, and in that space, and it's just. AI, I honestly believe AI could be an excellent tool for supporting teaching and learning. I really think that could happen. I'm thinking differentiation of curriculum, lots of really cool things it could do. But it's just being used now as a stopgap, I think, for a lot of teachers and students to fill a void in a lot of space, because, time poor, those kind of things there. But, and this is an international thing. I'm very lucky in this role. I get to engage with colleagues all around the world, and it's something that other jurisdictions are really battling with, about what this future means for teaching and learning.
Blake, jump on in before I completely take everything over and you disappear from the screen.
I don't know why I'm doing that. I'll just carry on. So we hear that you saying all of your media this week that people are leaving places like Victoria and Sydney and so on, because they're earning 3 times the salary. How can that not gear the government? It just blows my mind. They're just like, they can go. That must make you so frustrated, Chris.
incredibly frustrated. I was outside the minister's office in Browns Bay for my bit on Wednesday, and a teacher came up and said, "Look, I'm going to Melbourne at the end of the term. I'm getting a 30 grand pay rise." And he said, "There's lots of reasons I'm going, but a 30 grand pay rise is very helpful." And New Zealand teachers are incredibly well thought of overseas. They want us. We are great at what we do. It's to do with how we teach, our really relationship-based teaching. And we're one of the few jurisdictions that really nails it. So other jurisdictions around the world love us. They want us. If I go on Facebook for more than 10 minutes, I'm getting ads to come and teach in Canada, come and teach in Queensland, come and teach in the UK. And I'd say every secondary teacher, every teacher was getting those. But there's also, we recruit from overseas as well. And that puts pressure on other systems. We take a lot of teachers from Fiji, and I know I've got very good friends in the Fiji teacher unions, and they give me a bit of polite grief, friendly grief about, taking their teachers and it's not sustainable, to just keep, Australia takes from us, we take from Fiji. We love a lot of, recruit from South Africa a lot, and it's just not sustainable in those jurisdictions if we keep, effectively pillaging them.
How is this affecting the? Because I come to our media from the disability background. So how is this shortage and striking and all that rolls into it affecting our disabled and neurodiverse community and all of that kind of stuff? Because the change in routine must be very disruptive for the neurodiverse people. I can relate because that's me as well. So it must be very disruptive for your students, because I know when I was at school a few years ago, that was very disruptive for me. Being in a special school and having to have the strikes in 2019, I think it was, the last time this happened. So how do you find it now?
I mean, strike, unfortunately, does disrupt them, and we don't take it lightly. I know teachers really struggle with taking industrial action because they know the impact it has. For a lot of our students, the school's the safest place for them. It's a place they love. They love their teachers, and it's where they get the most support. But from our perspective, and you talk about disability and neurodiverse and specific learning needs, right now those students are getting lost in the system because the system is so under pressure. We've got significant class sizes. You've got non-specialist teachers. So I'm a history teacher. I'll be teaching physics, for instance. And while I could probably handle that, I don't think you're going to win any Nobel Prizes out of that class in physics, and that has a significant impact. So we know too, with teacher aid time and the learning support time, it's just getting swallowed up, and teachers. So I've had this explained to me, and again, it was actually a colleague from overseas, and it's been rattling in my brain a lot about moral injury that is happening in schools. And I know nurses often talk about this, medical people. So teachers know if we had the resource, we could do better. If we had the time, if we had the resource, and we could help our young people better, but we can't. And it's doing a moral injury to teachers. Teachers have talked to me about this. A colleague overseas was talking to me about it, and it's just been rattling in my brain ever since. And it's really how I think a lot of teachers are feeling, that real, we know we can do better, but we don't have the resource to do that. And it's just heartbreaking for parents, for the students, for the teacher, for everyone. Because if we want to solve the problems of the future, because we're going to have some, we know this, we need every young person, everyone maximized to their full potential. We can't afford to have, people missing out. It's just not sustained. It's just not going to, can't help us. So we need to make sure we can do that as a public education system where something like 96% of our students attend. We need to make sure that's there to support all students at every school.
We know that Erica Stanford is supposedly, and maybe you can shed more light on this, passionate about the learning support side of the disability community. And this was, one of the big carrots in her part of the budget for this year, I think it was. Has that come to fruition, or has that fallen a bit flat?
So that's been mostly in the primary sector, which again makes sense. You support that at the start of their time at school. My oldest daughter has really benefited from early intervention teaching, and I know that's been going to carry on longer now in primary, which is fantastic. But how some of that was paid for was taking resource out of secondary. So we had about 60 million taken out of secondary to help pay for that. That wasn't replaced or wasn't redone, and so that's what we're talking about, unmet need. In those, and particularly in those kids in year 8, 9, 10, around that, who haven't got the benefit of that time in the primary under this new system, but they've gone into a secondary system that doesn't have the resource to support them, and it's just so really difficult in that space. So again, I mentioned this I think before. We talked 10-year time frame for educational reform. So in theory, if Erica Stanford's structured literacy and structured maths and learning support and all that is really awesome, in theory we will see the benefit of that. But what about in 10 years' time? But what about those kids now, who we're going to see this year and next year and the next couple of years, who have not had any benefit from that early intervention stuff? It's going to be really tough, and we need to make sure their needs are met now, not in 10 years.
One more thing I wanted to touch on before I hand back to Paul is there's been a lot of discussion around the new classroom models, despite a previous national government bringing them in. Our Minister Stanford has indicated she would like to go back the other way. So, but ironically, in some cases, the one that they're going away from can actually be better for some disabled kids. So how do we find that happy medium for the one that it works for, and then you go back to the newer/older system where they have to relearn to do that again?
Yeah. So you've got that again. It's that lurch, and you've got we lurch towards open plan and model learning environments, and every school had to be this, and now we're lurching, and I hate this phrase, single cell classrooms. I think we need to come up with a better phrase than that, the way to describe them, lurching back to single cell classrooms. And it's like, can we have something in the middle that's consistent, that we can rely on, that we know is going to happen for the next 10, 15, 20 years? And because that's what, one of the real awesome things of this role, I visit lots of schools, talk to lots of teachers, and that's that they often, more than I've ever had in the last probably I'd say year and a half, of the lurch they hate, the pillar to post, and the change for the, not quite for the sake of change, but it does feel like that sometimes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
Let's have a little chat about Judith. Everybody's favorite attack eyebrows. She caught herself out this week, or apologized, as it were, for making a statement that teachers are on $140,000 a year and should just be grateful for it. And then came out and said, look, I'm sorry I said that, I was wrong, but they don't like us because we're the ones telling the truth, which feels like a gaslighting thing to me, not being involved in the process directly. I'm kind of curious about the PPTA response to that and what you've heard on the ground to that sort of comment.
So one of the main comments has been, well, if that's their offer, we'll take it. So a lot of teachers said that to me. If they're going to offer us $140,000, we'll take that. The other one was, I checked my pay slip, and I think Judith owes me some money. That seems to be the main response, because it was a bit, you had to laugh about it because it was ridiculous. And we, the ministry came out and said, well, yes, some people do actually get paid that much. And we always knew that, because some of our deputy principals at our larger schools will get paid that much. There's 2 jobs on the Ed Gazette now for deputy principals at large schools that you will be paid that much. But look, you're not going to be in the classroom. You're going to be working hard for that money as a deputy principal or assistant principal at a school that size. But the vast majority of our teachers, the vast majority, are nowhere near that. I've been a head of department. I've been a dean. The closest I ever got to that was still 30,000 short of that figure. And I've been teaching 20 years. So this 10 years, thing is just ridiculous. And so teachers we were laughing about it, but they were pissed off because they know how untrue it is. We know. Then Judith Judith is many things. I don't think she makes mistakes. Is what I'm going to say. She's. I think she's a smart woman a smart politician who's been around the traps for a while and knows what she's doing. So they were trying to paint a narrative of greedy teachers, but it fell flat because it didn't ring true. But also our parents and our communities know what we do. They see you taking the school production on Tuesdays. They see you at the sports field on Saturdays. You know, one of the things that actually, honestly, I hear the most when we have industrial action is we've got this thing happening. How can we make it? We've got this kids event. We've got this school play. We've got, debating. We've got chess tournament. We've got whatever. And they were like, we want to make this still happen. How can we do that? And you've got teachers who would have gone for the strike during the day and then gone off to do some work that night with some students at a chess tournament or debating or sports practice or something. And they weren't getting paid for that day, but they will still go and do it because they love it. They love what they do. And so it just didn't ring true. And to be honest, I was personally frustrated how much airtime that got because it wasn't what we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about unmet need. We wanted to talk about supporting teachers and students. But, the government's got a lot of sway and they can get up and say whatever they want. And then we all have to, follow along.
When you get feedback like that, comments like that from somebody like Judith, and it does dominate the media, do you see a shake-up in the way that the public perceive the issue? Because obviously there is a lot of media there. There are some media outlets that will publish that almost verbatim without fact-checking, for example. And they have a very, let's call them dedicated fan base who can shape narratives in online spaces. Do you actually see a follow-through from that sort of comment that if it's ill thought out or not, impacting the teachers at the end?
Oh, absolutely. You absolutely feel that. And you see it, because the sort of, traditional media will chuck it on Facebook and you can Google our wages. It's not a secret. Like it's our collective agreement is right there. You can look at our pay scales. So it's not hard to fact check it. And so, it does have an impact because you'll have teachers go, oh, my next door neighbor said I earn this much. And it's like, what? I don't. But luckily teachers, they're in the comments, they're having those, pushing back and all that. So, but it absolutely, because it'll be the headline. Teachers earn 147 after 10 years. And it's like, no, you don't. And it dominates the conversation and teachers want you to push back on it. They're like, hey, Chris, you need to be pushing back on this. PPTA, you need to be pushing back on this. And you want to, but you also want to be talking about what we want to talk about, which is, pastoral care, recruitment and retention, unmet need, curriculum change. But that it's, so it was pretty shitty time to deal with that. But I think our teachers were awesome. They were really clear. And they're just, an awesome bunch.
What's the next step? Now that you've done the industrial action, you've sent the message to the government. When does negotiations restart and kick off? Has there been talk about restarting those negotiations?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're meeting. I don't go to those meetings, so I can stay out of it and sort of talk about it in the media. But our team's going to be going Tuesday, Wednesday next week with the ministry. We met on Tuesday last week before the strike. Like I was really hopeful we could have called it off. There was no offer from the government. You can't. You've got nothing to talk about. You can't really call something off. So, like I'm always optimistic. I get accused of this all the time, and so I hope we can resolve this. That's our goal. Our goal is to get a settlement. I've said this very clearly to the minister. Our goal is to get a settlement, and hopefully that's the government's goal as well, is to get a settlement so we don't have to engage in industrial action. So we do have some more planned in the 15th of September that week, a rostering home as it's called, so we don't teach certain year levels on certain days. And I'd love to not do that. I'd love to be able to call that off. I'd love to send a settlement out to the members to ratify, but that's firmly in the government's court to make that decision. There's been some promising noise, I think I can say. They talked about in the media revising the offer. So what that means, we'll find out maybe Tuesday, Wednesday. I won't hold my breath, but I'm optimistic. But
what do you think about Judith threatening to tighten striking rules, Chris?
Look, there's honestly part of me that would I'd love to see you try. I don't think that would go down well with a lot of people. even people who probably don't agree with us would hate the fact that the government's trying to take away your rights in that area. I don't think they will do our right to strike. What I think is more likely is they will put more hoops for us to jump through before we're allowed to do it. They may lengthen the time before we can have strikes. They may say you have to have entered into mediation beforehand, or I think that is probably more likely. Ironically, one of the things that came out of our last collective round with the arbitration panel was trying to find a better way, and part of that was setting up sort of a remuneration panel or some sort of body to help with setting teacher pay. And we were interested in that because we don't want to have these arguments every 3 years. Like it's annoying. It's frustrating. And I know in the UK they have something similar, or in England they have something similar. I know other jurisdictions have something similar. So we were happy to have those conversations, but they weren't really. The ministry wasn't really forthcoming in those conversations. So that was really disappointing. So maybe after this, and if the government maybe want to have those conversations, we're more than open to them, because arguing about pay every 3 years is annoying.
Yeah, and lastly, what is you going into election year? What is going to be your message to the opposition and the current government to say? Because you were saying at the start of the conversation, it's just a constant cycle, right? So how are you going to go into this coming 12 months to make sure that whoever is the next administration, you don't have to go round and round in circles with changing the curriculum again, hopefully?
Ultimately, we would love for education to be apolitical. Now, I don't think that will ever happen. Because there's going to be different views. You can look at our relationship and sexuality education. There's going to be different views on that. There's different views on how to teach Aotearoa history. I'm a history teacher, and what I think is good history is probably not something that David Seymour thinks is good history. So there's always going to be those discussions. But I think if we can get a clear direction of education, what we want for our young people, because at the heart of it, it's about making every young person the best they can be. And if we have an education that allows that to happen, and it's properly funded, and this is the opposition and the current administration, whoever you are next time, properly fund education, support the sector, and support young people. That's the ultimate of what education should be. And then everything flows from it. If you want to create little economic units, that's some sort of right-wing theories of education, or you want to create awesome, well-rounded people that are fantastic. There's another, that can all still happen within a well-funded, well-supported, well-resourced education system. So that's our call always to, because the PPTA is, even though we're a union, we're non-partisan. We believe in good education policy, so we'll support whoever's got, whatever policy is a good one. But with the tax on workers, as we see with this, the right to strike, the partial strike deductions, all of this. There's even some employment law change we'd love to see from the next government, if it happens to be the opposition that comes in. And our advice to them would be don't go slow. I think that's what happened last time. Don't go slow. Go hard, and bring in those changes that we need, particularly in, say, workplace relations.
Anything else before we say goodbye, Paul?
Yeah, one is a history teacher more than anything. Now, I'm showing my age here. I remember strikes like this when Jim Bolger was Prime Minister, Helen Clark was Prime Minister, John Key was Prime Minister. We've got this round that's coming up now. I'm pretty sure that there was some when Jacinda was Prime Minister, but that was COVID-y time, so it's a little bit of a blur. How frustrating is it to realize that people who are not learning from history are seemingly doomed to repeat it?
Oh, honestly, it's so frustrating as a history teacher. And look, we see this in even the curriculum, we're swinging pillar to post and assessment pillar to post. It's so frustrating, and it's, we know what good education should be. And it's easy to do. It's not hard. It's lack of political will to do it. And that's what I've always talk about to teachers and anyone who listen. I joke I'll turn up, don't have a packet of chips to talk about education. And so it's lack of political will, and it's just annoying that they say there's a list of New Zealand prime ministers of all shades who teachers have had to go on protest with.
It's been absolutely brilliant having you here, Chris. Good luck with the rest of the negotiations. Hopefully you can get them wrapped up really soon. And hopefully the public gets a better understanding as to what's going on, because the messaging from the government is very narrow.
Thank you for all that you do as well.
No, thank you, guys. And I'd love to come back on. We've got a settlement so we can talk about it. So I'll hold you to that.
Definitely.
You're more than welcome. Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See, I could never be a teacher. I just don't have the patience for it. I am in awe all the time of educators. It just blows my mind. I've had some amazing comments coming through tonight as well.
I just realised that we're supposed to have it's been half an hour, but are we supposed to be in a black hole? Background.
It's all good. Next up, I'm going to play our interview with Carolyn, because I think that's a really fascinating one to look at. Carolyn from Retail NZ. We had a chat to her this week about Paywave fees. Now that the dust is settled, I think it's a really cool idea to get an idea as to what's actually happening, what the actual charges are looking at, and who's actually going to be hurt by it. So I think that will be what we do next. Any objections?
Just so you guys know, we did have to. The reason why this one's a bit out of place is due to Carolyn's schedule. We had to wait a while for this one. So
that's all good. I think we covered it well when we got in there. And yeah, like I said, full on episode tonight. So let's check up with Carolyn and learn a little bit more about the Paywave thing.
Recently, the government announced charges to surcharges and Paywave for businesses. Will it be good for the consumer? Will it be bad for the consumer? Will it be good for businesses? Will it be bad for businesses? Here to talk about it is friend of the show, Carolyn Young from Retail NZ. Welcome back to the show, Carolyn. It's good to see you.
Kia ora, Blake. Good to see you. Thank you for having me. And hi, Paul. Good to see you too.
You too. Random question for you. That this is, we've had about a month now, I think it is, since the announcement came out that National has been pushing really hard on their socials that they're getting rid of fees for Paywave at certain places, like little dairies and stuff like that. They're making sure that those fees are no longer charged. Is it as simple as the social media messaging is putting out?
And an answer, no, it's not simple at all. Payments is a really complex space. So the headline article, you're right, the headline is no more pesky surcharging, right? But what does that mean? What does it really mean for people? So firstly, legislation needs to be passed for this to be enacted, because the current legislation enables merchants, which are hospitality businesses, retailers, anyone that takes a payment through a terminal provider, that takes those payments, they are legally allowed to recover the costs of the fees through a surcharge. So in order for this to be enacted, they need to change the legislation. So MB are charged with doing that. And the minister has announced that it should take place from May next year. Now, the one thing to be aware of is that he did say that all those pesky surcharges are gone, but what he didn't say is what's excluded. So businesses would still be able to surcharge if you pay by Amex, if you pay by Union Pay, which is another credit card, if you pay through an international card. So if you're from overseas and you're going to pay with your credit card from overseas, you can be surcharged for that. If you're using a prepaid card like a Prezi card, that can be surcharged. Or if you're making a payment online, that also can be surcharged. So there's quite a few exceptions. So it's not as straightforward as the minister made out, but his plan is to ban surcharging.
What are the chances that, like for an individual transaction, like my local shops, it's 1.5 if I go to the bakery. If I go to the dairy, it's 2.5. Like it's different for each individual group. What are the chances that those surcharges then get passed on to the consumer by having an increase in price to cover those costs?
Yeah, highly likely, right? So the charges that the historical piece of where we've come from is that we, back in the late 1980s, about 1987, I think it was, or 88, FPOS came into being. And so FPOS transactions are free for a business. So if you have any transactions that go through the FPOS switch, So whether you use an EFTPOS card or you insert a debit card, they're free. So there's no fees that are charged at all. And at the moment, about 40% of the transactions that happen for businesses go through that EFTPOS switch. They're free. The other transactions have a fee attached to them, which could be anything from 1% to 2% or slightly higher if it's an international card. So what we've heard from businesses that currently surcharge is that they would look to increase prices to cover those costs. We're in a really difficult trading environment at the moment, and the costs of the transactions that go through the Visa and MasterCard network, which are the ones we're talking about, they incur very high costs. And when businesses are down to, either breaking even or making a loss, charging or receiving a cost of another 1.5% on your business is the difference between staying open and not. And so businesses will likely increase costs. And that means it's a generic fee that everyone will pay, right? So if you're going in to buy a can of Coke at the dairy, it may rise. It probably won't rise from $1.50 to $1.52.5. It's going to rise probably to $1.60, because if you're paying by cash, there's no 5-cent pieces anymore. $1.60 makes sense. So that would be an increase that would be above that 1.5-2%. So I think, I'm not saying that's the price that someone's, I'm just giving you an example of what could happen, because ultimately people will want to make a price that is feasible for everyone. So removing the surcharging means that every consumer pays. Having the option to have a surcharge means only those that paying by contactless methods would pay a surcharge. So, putting the ban on surcharging is actually an inflationary factor that's going to impact. And then the other thing that will happen is that we know that human behaviour from, especially data from overseas, that transactions will move from paying by EFTPOS to paying by contactless, which means that a higher percentage of transactions that a business receives will have a fee attached to them. So not only are they not able to recoup the cost of the surcharge, be able to recoup the cost of the fees through a surcharge, they'll have a higher number of transactions that will incur a fee. So businesses will be doubly worse off, which is why prices will potentially go up.
Out of curiosity, is it a legal requirement for a shop to tell you if they're charging you a surcharge at point of sale?
Yes, it is. Yes, they should have a sign that demonstrates that there's a surcharge and what the surcharge is, or potentially on the terminal itself that it says that there's a surcharge, and then you have to go, yes, you accept the surcharge. So either way, either that there's a sign that's visible, or that when you go through to pay, you have to click another button before you go straight through.
Okay. Blake, jump on in, because I'm going to completely dominate this if I don't let you have a say.
So there's a lot to unpack here. So, there's the more money going on to consumers is a bad thing, right? But what the government have attempted to do here is take most of these fees away to combat cost of living, allegedly. So have you suggested to the minister any alternative that he could have done or should have done to find a happy medium, so that the idea that sounds good still, happens, but then it doesn't get passed on to the consumer?
Great question, Blake, and I think your point is really right. There's no free lunch. So the fact that the intention is that it's better off for the consumer doesn't play out when you walk all the way through it. So what we've said to the minister, and what we've said in all of our media, is that we were supporting the Commerce Commission around the steps that they were looking to take with regard to surcharging. The Commerce Commission are responsible for regulating surcharging. So it's an offence to surcharge too much, and the Commerce Commission are responsible for making sure that doesn't happen. Their plan was that next year they were going to do a consultation process with business and consumers around surcharging to determine how that would play out. Our conversations with the Commerce Commission were indicating to us that they were likely to put a cap on the level of surcharging that businesses could implement. So it was probably likely to be around 1%, maybe just a little bit under that. That would make it really clear to consumers around what they could be charged and really clear to businesses around what they could charge. And so that would be the happy middle ground, right? Because it wouldn't be inflationary, because it's actually matching the changed fees that are going to come in December would be matching those lower fees with the new surcharge limit, and consumers would be aware of that. So it would just be a much more balanced approach in terms of that. The other piece that we've spoken to the Minister about is that not having Amex or Union Pay or any of the other cards outside of the Visa and MasterCard network not included means it's not a level playing field. So those cards, banks will start issuing more Amex cards. They'll start putting more benefits on those cards, and those cards will have higher fees. And, consumers will end up having to pay a surcharge for those. So we actually think that if you're going to say no surcharging, or you're going to put a limit on surcharging, it needs to be across the whole network, not just part of it.
So therefore, do you think that this is a genuine mistake by the Minister and you have pointed it out to him, or he only wanted to try it with certain cards?
Look, 80% of the transactions go through the Visa or MasterCard network, which is part of the reason why he's chosen just those cards. They have also been lobbying government to have a ban on surcharging. So it is what the credit card companies have wanted and what the banks want, because they'll end up making more fees, right? They're going to have more transactions go through their switch, so they'll be better off in the long run. I think from the Minister's perspective, he simplified a very complex space, and I think when you start looking at it, payments is very complex. So the merchant service fee, which is the fee that is charged to businesses that accept payments, has about 5 or 6 different components included in it. So it's not straightforward, it's overly complex, and so it makes it very difficult for businesses to understand how their fees are made up. And realistically, for the Minister to come in with one quick statement that leans towards supporting consumers, but ultimately probably backlashes against them, I think might have been a little bit vote grabbing.
And finally, from me, do you think that have you encouraged the Minister, or do you think that government will have to make it very clear that for international tourists and visitors to our tourism economy, that they are still going to be charged for certain cards, because a high percentage of the tourism has the union cards and so forth?
Yeah, good point, Blake. Look, the international cards are very expensive for businesses to accept, which is why those cards, they have a much higher fee, so which is why I think the Minister left those out. I think it'll depend on how the wording is changed in terms of the legislation, and I would imagine that they'll continue to state that if you are going to surcharge, you need to have a notification to say that, to your point earlier, Paul, and so businesses would need to have something that they advise people with a international card that they may be surcharged. So I think that piece would probably still say the same, but we'll be waiting to see what the legislation looks like when it's reworded.
I just have a concern that, we don't want international visitors to be stung coming over here thinking, they've seen on the news that they're limiting surcharging, then they hop over here and they think, I'm not going to get charged, and they get popped with a charge.
Yeah. It's very similar to people that are going to pay by Amex or Union Pay or a Prezi card or online, right? They can also all be surcharged. So that's why it's confusing, and that's why the headline is just that, right? It's a headline grabbing moment, but it doesn't provide enough information that outlines what everybody is going to experience. So you're right, it will be difficult for people to understand why they're being surcharged if the headline has been that they won't be. So it's complicated and could end up with some tension at point of payment between customer and the retailer.
Do you want to add anything to finish off, Paul?
Well, yeah, just a quick question really about the sort of long-term and short-term impacts of this kind of announcement. Obviously, the government has been, this is what we're doing, isn't it amazing? You've mentioned it's May next year that they're looking at bringing the legislation in. So does that mean that we're looking at going into a Christmas period, busiest period in the year for retail, where consumers might be under the impression that they're not going to be charged these surcharges that they will be charged?
Possibly. The minister was relatively clear, but as you say, look, people will take that headline and think, oh, there's no more surcharging. We've had retailers contact us, and we know they've contacted the banks as well, asking about what they needed to do because it felt like it was an immediate impact. So there will be a little bit of confusion out there, but hopefully, people are paying and purchasing things between now and Christmas. They'll hopefully get some education on the way through about fact that it's not happening right now, but it is just another one of those confusing points.
But thank you for joining us today, Carolyn. It was good to have you on as always. Your knowledge is very much valued to our retail community, and we enjoy having you on always.
Thank you, Blake and Paul, for having me. It's always great to chat, and it's such an interesting topic, payments. It's really complicated, and I think it's going to be complicated for consumers as well.
I should unmute us since I muted us before. Fascinating stuff about payments. Anything you want to add before we jump into the next one?
Just that as I foreshadowed to you earlier in the week, we've got the second Wellington leg of the It's in the Ballot tour this weekend, so I have to go and get some stuff done before I go to bed. So because you've got the next interview to yourself, it's probably a good time for me to pop out. But I just wanted to foreshadow that we do have another minister coming on very soon. So if anyone has any questions about granny flats or anything like that, we're going to be talking to Chris Peck, the Minister of Construction, very soon. So maybe
we've got him lined up for sometime next month, haven't we? Like early next month.
Yeah. So
an actual government minister. Should be interesting.
So,
in that case, good luck with everything. It should be fun. The Wellington stuff. Wellington, it's in the ballot. Kiwi Skirt wants to know, Chris Pink, Minister for Construction. He will be popping into the show in early September. So that should be interesting. I'll be nice.
So just to be clear, I'm not going to the shows. I have to prepare candidates helping next. So I'm going to leave it here and enjoy the chat about the book.
Fantastic. Well, in that case, I will jump into the sales pitch. We've had two people approach us in the last couple of weeks about doing stuff on their books. One was Voices for Freedom, wanting to know if we would take a look at their new $60 look, we were right, everybody else was wrong, bullshit COVID inquiry thing that they put out.
They contacted me trying to offer me.
To which you made the right decision by just saying goodbye. But the other one that we got asked about is this, The Unlikely Doctor by Dr. Timoti Moke. Oh my God, I have not been able to sleep. Like I go to bed at night and I'm just, oh shit, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And how did I suddenly, keep reading this for so long? It is absolutely amazing. It is his life story where he started off South Auckland with, in his own words, no hope of success, and he's now a doctor at Middlemore, and it's been a hell of a journey to get there. So I caught up with him yesterday, had a great chat. What we're playing tonight is the abridged version of the interview, and it's still half an hour long. There is a full version that's available online now for paid subscribers. It'll go open to the public tomorrow, I think about lunchtime. Yeah. So I guess just jump straight into that one.
Enjoy the interview, everyone, and I'll see you next week or whenever we do another one of these.
Yes, soon-ish, hopefully. Joining me now, I've got probably one of the busiest people in the country, I would imagine, at the moment, Dr. Timoti, best-selling author, doctor, running around doing... First of all, kia ora, how are you?
Kia ora. Very well, Paul. Thank you.
How are you finding your time at the moment, juggling between the work that you're doing at Middlemore versus the press tour and everything like that?
What can I say? Diet and exercise, mate. But also too, I guess having to do stuff that is vastly different from work, it kind of it's not as draining because I guess I'm using other parts of my brain or something.
That makes sense. Now, for those that don't know, you are the author of this book, The Unlikely Doctor. This is the thing that's been keeping me up at night over the last week because I just haven't been able to put it down. It's been absolutely stunning. It takes us on a really interesting journey, right from when you started, like when you were born, all the way through to where you are now. I've got a couple of questions that have popped into my head around this. And the first one's actually around the opening, where you talk about walking down the street, coming back from Middlemore, you're in your doctor scrubs, you've got your stethoscope and everything like that on there as you're walking down the street and you see a young kid across the other side of the road. And it's a very deliberate thing that you've done, so you can show people, that this sort of thing's capable. But do doctors have to buy their own stethoscopes? Is that why you take it home?
No, actually, I've lost a bunch of stethoscopes because I carry them home and that. So now I've kind of appropriated one of the hospital ones. The ones that doctors usually grab are they can be quite expensive, and so it was costing a lot of money when I'd lose one. So now I use the bargain basement hospital ones, which are just as good.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. I think that story, though, encapsulates what the book is like, or what the book is about in a lot of ways. There to inspire people and show people that it can be done. One of the other things that jumped out at me in the book quite early on is you point out you don't want to be used as an example of success. You're an outlier to the system. I'm really curious how you feel about, now that you've sort of done the press tour and stuff like that, and you've seen how well the book is selling, how do you feel about that stance of being an outlier as opposed to a success story?
I still 100% feel the same. The thing is that, and this is where I need to be super careful for, because the book is doing so well and I'm getting such good feedback. It's really easy to get caught up in that wave and start believing your own press, And I didn't write the book for that. I wrote the book for what I'm doing actually now, and if I allow myself to get caught up in that and caught up in that way, it's quite easy for me to kind of align with the old the current adage of what's going on, and particularly with this current government. All you need to do is pull your socks up. You just need to work harder. Don't buy those lattes at the coffee shop, and you'll be fine. And that we both know, and the whole country knows, and the world knows that it's rubbish. And so in order to not allow, I guess, people within those kind of environments to kind of jump on my bandwagon and go, see, he if you just if you followed his rule and just picked up your socks, you'll be fine, and that's rubbish. And so I need to stay on this side of it and continue to know that I am the outlier, but I'm working towards me becoming the rule.
I think one of the things that jumped out for me as well with this is there's a really strong theme of kaitiakitanga that comes through, and the importance of that. Sort of from your very earliest days, for example, you felt that, and to the period where you didn't, and you started to sort of get a little bit more out of control, and you went through some of those really challenging parts of your life until you sort of came back into it. And I noticed it more towards the end when you're starting to do your work as a paramedic and leading into the study as a doctor. How important is that concept to you in your life story, and how important do you think it is for people to understand that concept?
I think again that is one of the core foundations that have allowed me to evolve in the way I've evolved. I could quite easily have been at the stage become very bitter at the world. Had robbed me of my potential, and then just try and turn my back on it. But then, like I say, Paul, that would do nothing for my people, and it would do nothing for this country. And so I am at this amazing point in time where I have this unique opportunity to help this country evolve in the way that I've evolved.
As I said to you before we started recording as well, this feels like a handbook for what not to do that we're seeing the government roll out at the moment around a range of issues, particularly around things like boot camp. The abuse and state care report gets a mention in the book as well, and how we're setting things up like that. Because you did the training stuff as well down in, is it Linton, I think it was, middle of nowhere, freezing cold place, and everything that I read in there. In my head, I'm going, I remember seeing the research that said that this is what's going to happen with the current government policy. I'm very curious to hear how you felt actually putting that into words, and then how you feel the government is doing at the moment in terms of, are they listening to people like you who have been through these experiences, or what an audience might be able to get out of it, for example, who aren't necessarily aware of what it's like to go through something like that?
Very good question. I think, I know, and we'll rewind the tape a little bit and go back to when I got out of. I went to see my probation officer, and he said that I had the worst report to ever come out of PPTA. The thing is that if something like that was supposed to work, it's obvious that it went exactly the opposite way when I came out. But here's the danger of it, Paul, and because we get caught up in how the individual will be, they'll get out, they'll be fitter, faster, stronger, they'll be angry, exactly like I was. But here's the major risk, and which I was very fortunate that it didn't happen to me. I was super fortunate. I didn't get recruited by a charismatic, forward-thinking leader who saw the talents that I could bring, and align those talents with other opportunities that they could gather to help create a foundation for their movement. And that's what we have now. We actually have now groups with charismatic leaders that have resources at the moment that they can invest into young people coming out of those institutions that are young, fit, angry, and disciplined, and able to take orders. And then I said this on breakfast. You've got this government that's legalizing putting pseudoephedrine back into cold and flu tablets. So you've got an opportunity to create massive resources, mate. And now you've got a group that can not only protect those resources for you, but can help you create more and help you create this empire, mate. And now we've got this government, and yeah, I fully hang shit on them, man, because that's what they deserve for coming up with these plans. But the thing is, even if any predecessing government, it didn't matter which side of the aisle they were on, had put this rule in, they were with the amount of damaging reports coming out of this, they still would have said, "Oh yeah, but the good that come out of it." And that's exactly what this government said. "Oh yeah, but there's good things that have come out of it, and look at these good things." And that's what governments are really, really bad at. They're really bad at taking on responsibility for their failures. Yeah, and they'll look for ways to minimize the really bad stuff and to keep going with those bad plans, because they don't want to see as being stupid for making stupid decisions. And this government is classic for that. They are a government that has made countless and countless stupid decisions, and are just fobbing off all the wrongs that have happened, and going, "Oh yeah, but this part's good and that part's good, and so yeah, we're going to carry on." And I think any subsequent government coming after them, if they truly believe in helping this country evolve, should actually learn from that and go, okay, if they make a decision for something and something just mucks up, go, "Yeah, well, that was my bad. I am really sorry. Let's take it back to the drawing board, and let's learn from people."
Should taking responsibility for their actions? That doesn't sound normal.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough ask. But the thing is that is the only way I can see our country actually making correct changes. And what will happen, and I can guarantee this, mate, with these decisions like having these boot camps and having the ability to create resources, this is just going to get a bigger problem, and it's going to go on for generations, and we are going to just end up exactly where this current government wants us, and the ability to do stuff like privatize prisons and privatize other stuff, because and that's what the end goal of this government is anyway, is to privatize everything, and so that's where we're going to end up, and we as a country need to wake up about that and start kicking these people out.
You have a really unique position in that you've been through this punitive justice system, and now you're working in the medical system, in the health sector, which is another area that this government is saying, "Look, we're doing really amazing things because we gave you all this money, even though it was less than the rate of inflation, and they're cutting back and they're not hiring staff and all that kind of stuff." I'm kind of curious about your perspective on what you're seeing happening in the health system as a doctor, but also with having that experience of seeing what, the same mistakes being repeated in the past, and that coming through to how you see what's going on in health these days.
Absolutely, mate. That's a great question. And you're absolutely right. They've said, "Oh, we've given this money," but they've slashed and burned a heap of staff, a heap of funding, and given us back pitting. And already we see where they're going with this is they've gone and starting to roll out to have certain operations done private, because that's the end goal, is to make this a private health system. And that's when you get people like they do over in other countries where they've got private health, the health system is totally private, dying because they can't afford their insulin. And that's the way we want to head. No, and it's where we are at the moment is on the precipice of that, and it's disgusting. We've got people lining up 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning at ED in Middlemore on a weekday, and that's because they can't afford the $20 to go to the GP, mate. And so they will come there and they will wait for hours and hours, and then it'll get too late and they'll have to go to work, so they'll leave sick, and they'll take that home, and then the whole house gets sick, mate. And then the whole house is sick, and they lose the person that's providing the money, for the house. And so then what happens is they come into hospital, and then it's just going over and again. Now the thing is that even if we had private health, that wouldn't be able to fix it. And so what that would actually make it worse. And so I think, well, I know that we are on this precipice in terms of health, where we will just, mate, we're gonna keep people poor and sick, and that's nowhere. It's never ever been good for a country.
As a doctor, then, what would you like to see a future government do to fix that?
Well, we can't get where I want it to be overnight, but my personal opinion is there shouldn't be a budget for health. The health starts as the main core for everything. To be able to learn good, learn right, you need health. You need children to be fed. You need to be living in warm houses. You need to have the power, and you need to have access to the internet. You need all of this stuff. And so, in order to have adequate health, the family needs to have a home, have healthy food, cheap healthy food, have employment, have education, and so I think that the end goal for us as a country should be gearing to a health system that has no budget, it's going to take a while, but that should be our goal.
Really interesting as well hearing you say that about, healthy homes, stuff like that, because obviously when you were younger in the book, you detail quite vividly some of those sort of circumstances that you found yourself in, where you weren't eating, where you were in a drafty home, mattress on the floor kind of thing, and that sort of was part of what led you into the path that you went down. Do you think the general public, or even the politicians out there making these decisions, understand that correlation between here's something that happens at home that doesn't seem necessarily health related all the time, so this is the outcome that people are dealing with, or that they're working themselves towards because of this, the domino effect, as it were?
I would bet that not one politician has ever slept on the street. I bet that maybe is going to uni or something like that. That they maybe lived in a drafty house in that. But I don't think that they had that there would be many ministers that lived in a house that had a hole in the roof that used to just rain pour in when it was raining. I don't believe that they would. They lived in a house that had cockroaches or fleas. And so that for them to actually for them to actually go, oh yeah, well, I know how to fix this, is actually rubbish. The thing is that I'll give you an example of where of how that would be for me in terms of where I am working in a hospital. Like I've got O&G coming up, so that's Obs and Guiding. We do quarterly runs. We do 13-week runs. I'm currently in ICU. Love it, mate. It's awesome. It's where I'm going to be. But in October, I start in Obs and Guiding, O&G. Now, I've done that before, like while I was at TI, while I was studying. I really enjoyed it, but I know that it's not for me because I find myself explaining women's problems to women, and I feel like a dick. It's like how am I ever going to have the correct understanding? Don't get me wrong. I think the male surgeons that I've worked with in O&G are really good at their job. But me personally, for me, I find myself explaining women's problems to women, and I feel like a dick. And so what I would always do, like what I'm planning to do, is when I get into O&G, is that anything and everything I would be deferring to my senior doctors, because again, I would need that guidance, and that's where I think this government, subsequent governments fail is that they believe that they are the all-knowing and they will make these decisions, and and there will be the correct decision, which is rubbish.
So you mentioned before ICU, you're in there at the moment. What is it that you're enjoying about that?
I think it's it's a bunch of things. The people come in are very, very sick. Right, I'm in HDU, so there's two parts to our ICU. There's ICU, intensive care unit, and there's HDU, so high dependency unit. So people are still really sick, but they're not sick like they're not intubated. They don't have tubes down them with ventilators, respirator, breathing for them and stuff like that. But they're still quite sick, and I enjoy understanding the complexity of this illness, and they're usually coming in with multiple different illnesses, and being able to go, okay, why are they here? Okay, so what's the most important? This one here, then this one, then putting them into a hierarchy. Okay, now let's look at it holistically, wholly, and how we're going to manage this. And then on top of that, like it's a very procedural. Like I'll get to at present I've been learning how to put in arterial lines, because we need the arterial line in order to understand what the pressure is inside the artery, because that's what guides us on whether or not we need to give them medication that help them with their blood pressure. That's what they normally come to us for. Is what we call vasopressors that keep their blood pressure maintained at a certain level. And but then also too, I've had an opportunity to try out have a go at a central line. They're quite difficult, and I was very fortunate. Like I had a very very knowledgeable instructor. However, I ended up having to hand it over to the other doctor, because the person I was trying to put the line in wasn't asleep. They were awake, and so we just local. I've used local, so there's a big vein here called the jugular vein, and what we do is this person, they needed to get dialyzed, so they had kidney problems. So what they do is they take the blood out, they wash it, and they put it back in. And they do it through. They've got to do it because they're moving a whole lot of blood at once. They've got to use a really big vein, and so they usually use here or one on the femoral. And normally, a lot of times, people are put to sleep. They put in under general anesthesia, but this guy's awake and we just use the local. So I put in the local. I've got my ultrasound. I've seen where the vein is. I've tracked it down. And I go, okay, yeah, that's where I'm going to run my needle. I've gone to put my needle in, and he starts looking around at me like this way.
Oh.
He starts looking like this way because he's not asleep. Okay, oh man, don't move, please don't move, stay that way. And he's going, yeah, okay. And I go to put it in again. He starts looking around like that again. And so I had to defer to my boss, and he put it in. So, but yeah. So hopefully, I'll get another guy and another try, and that patient will be asleep at that time.
Who inspires you?
I haven't, and it may sound a bit egotistical, but it's really I haven't thought of following in anyone's footsteps lately. I did like I still do. I admire Nelson Mandela. Yeah. He I think he was an amazing man, and he did so much for his country, and he suffered so much to be able to do so much. And like what I do is I look at a lot of different people, and there's certain aspects that I like about them. And I go, oh yeah, that would be really good to achieve something like that. But in terms of where I am at the moment, it was without any ego when I say that there's no one in this country and quite possibly the world that's overcome a life I've overcome and gone on to be where I am now. And so I'm kind of in a space where I'm doing what I can, but it's more important that I have the door left open for people to come through, and so what I've done is And that's the main reason why I've written this book, is that it wasn't for anything else other than what I believed I was able to do with it. And I am achieving that goal. Like this Monday, I'm going down to Wellington, and I'm going to talk to the Office of Ombudsman, and hopefully after that talk, they're going to agree to recommend my book go into prisons and into drug rehabs, because that's where it needs to be. I'm ecstatic that people have gone out and bought this book, and people are getting a lot from it. But the people that it's supposed to go to don't have the opportunity to get it, and that's those prisoners, those people in prison. It's those people in drug rehab. It's those people in Housing New Zealand. It's those people in WINS. They are the ones that need the book. They are the ones that need to realise that they have a potential that's within them, that up till now has not been able to. They've not been able to realise, and it's not because of them. It's not their fault. It's because of the barriers that they've been born into. That the barriers that have been put in front of them that have prevented them from realising their potential. And that's what they need to understand. And it's those people that need to be able to read the book. And so I'm on the journey to getting it out to those people. And I'm starting with on Monday, starting with the Office of Ombudsman.
Brilliant. I think that you're absolutely spot on.
Thank you very much. And the other part is the book is selling well, so it's making money. I've created a charitable organisation, and what I tended to do is that 15% will be put into ways of assisting Māori that are in the same predicament as I was, to help them realise their potential. But the thing is, Paul, you don't have to be Māori to suffer the effects of negative social determinants. It's just that Māori make up the greatest proportion, and that's through colonisation. But you don't have to be Māori to suffer those negative effects. So another 15% goes to non-Māori that are suffering from them, that need the support to help realise their potential. And the other thing though is, like, I can't be free unless we're all free. Now, I can't save the world, Paul, but I can start with one place. So 15% goes to the people of Palestine. And so what this book has allowed me to do is allow me to use the resources to help people and to help create, help build the potential within this country, and hopefully utilize what we're building here is a beacon, is a blueprint that can be taken across to all Indigenous people, but then to all people that are suffering, and that's where I think my end goal is going to be. I want to help this country evolve, but ultimately I want this world to evolve alongside it. Because what I found coming through this life is that I may have evolved, but society hasn't evolved alongside me, and my journey part of my journey needs to help society evolve alongside with me, and that's what this book is allowing me to do.
And my last question for you is, right at the start of the book, you talk about how when you were about 6 years old, you went from this place of aroha with your grandparents to a place that was not like that with your birth mother. If you could go back to that 6-year-old now, what would you tell him?
The thing is, Paul, that it would be difficult for me to well, not so much the 6-year-old, because the 6-year-old has come into this world and through a loving, supportive environment. So he's at that stage where he's experienced that for 6 years, and he's very open to it. So it would be to tell him that times are going to be hard, but believe me, you have the strength to survive, and you will survive. And not only that, you will survive in a way that will benefit not only this country but this world. But then, like at 14, when I'm broken, it wouldn't be that, like, it doesn't matter what I would say to that 14-year-old, because I'm broken with. And that's like because I went to stay with a very loving family, and they couldn't reach me. They tried as hard as they could, and believe me, if I was in a position to accept it, I would have accepted it, but I couldn't understand it. So it didn't matter how much love and support they gave me. I was so far down that rabbit hole, I wasn't coming back.
Where can people find the book?
Yeah, go online. Wickles and most nearly every bookstore has them. The publishers are really chuffed. It's the first time a first author has gone number one in the first week.
You bumped Jacinda off the top of the list as well, didn't you?
Yeah, she's cool. Yeah, man. And so I felt a bit stink about that. But yeah, it's good. It's good in terms of. Don't get me wrong, Paul. It's good in terms of what I'm able to do with it, rather than the I guess the big ego that comes with it. It's good because when I go down on Monday, it gives me that much more backing.
Yeah.
You know, when I go down on Monday, it'll be that much more ears pricked up to what I have to say, and that's what's important.
That is brilliant. Good luck for Monday. Thank you very much for being here. I'm really looking forward to hearing what the outcome is actually of that meeting with the Ombudsman. It would be brilliant.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I see Kiwi Skirts found the answer, but it is The Unlikely Doctor by Dr. Timoti Moke. It's available at all booksellers now. It is, there's some really hard parts to get through, but it is absolutely stunning when you get there. And when I say hard, I mean as in when you're sitting there reading it, you're going to be wondering how we could fail something. But I said to him before we started the interview, it feels like a how-to book on failing the way that the current government is doing. He goes, yep, that's very deliberate. He, as you could tell, is not a fan at all. So yeah, for people who are paid subscribers, you can actually see the full interview now on the YouTube page as well. And it'll go open to the public tomorrow about lunchtime. There's about an extra 10 minutes worth of chatting in there. So it was, absolutely brilliant. You can see why I was very excited about that, and definitely not wanting to do the Voices for Freedom one. I don't know if it's on audio. Actually, I haven't checked that yet. One of the first things I said to him is, how do you find time to be a doctor? And this, I don't know if he'd find time to do the audio book as well. But yeah, it's out there. Hopefully it's an audio book soon, if it's not already one now. I mean, bestseller, it's got to be an audio book at some point in time. Right, I'm going to, because it's 10 to 9, and I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to get to see BHN before 9 o'clock, because I don't want to hold anybody up. So I'm just going to jump straight into the news, which is about 9 minutes long. So yeah, let's watch the news. In this week's the news, the NZSIS raised warning bells about national security. Climate change in action threatens the country's international standing. New Zealand's first military espionage conviction, and the surprising omissions from central government that they consider not to be core services for local government. All that and more on this week's the news. Hello there, kia ora, welcome to this week's the news. I'm Paul, and I'm not sure how happy clams are or why we compare our happiness with theirs. This week, a report from the NZSIS on the current national security environment hit with calls that the current situation is the toughest it's ever been. The report highlights a range of issues around national security, including foreign interference built through personal, business, and sister city relationships, the ease of access to harmful and hateful online content for young people that can lead to radicalization, and public figures promoting and seemingly endorsing ideologies which normalize radicalization, said a spokesperson for the coalition. I'm sorry, you can't talk to an MP at the moment. The Foreign Affairs Minister is meeting with that advisor that made the news for all of the conspiracy stuff and Jacinda threats he posts, while planning on vilifying another Rainbow MP. The Deputy Prime Minister is busy collecting donations from people who wanted to blow up mosques while making jokes about the Ministry of Pacific Affairs, and the Prime Minister is meeting with friends of Shane Jones and Casey Costello, who helped write our policies that deliver on their specific interests. Court action is beginning this month as 5 unions join forces over pay equity changes, arguing that they breach the Bill of Rights. The unions argue the decision and the process leading to it breaches 3 fundamental rights: freedom from gender-based pay discrimination, the right to natural justice, and the right to fair legal process. The Ministry of Workplace Relations responded with a statement saying that the change was signed off as not a breach of the Act by the Attorney General's office. And because that's what we want to hear this time, we're going to agree. Not like when she said it was disenfranchising voters or gang patch bans were going to be breaching the same act. Public Services Minister Judith Collins, seen here when somebody reminded her husband is Samoan, so talofa, admitted this week she got teacher pay rates wrong when claiming the average teacher salary was $140,000, while also claiming teachers were actually upset at her because she let the public know the truth in a stand-up where she admitted that she was wrong. The ACT Party, from their official Parliamentary Services-funded Twitter account, has continued attacks this week on local authorities putting out public information on Māori wards, how they work, how they create a better decision-making process, better treaty partnerships, and a more inclusive democracy, by complaining about the waste of ratepayer funding to put out messaging on a referendum, forced on it by the current government, costing local councils tens of thousands of dollars. Said a representative for the ACT Party, "No, I don't know what the definition of ironic is. Why do you ask?" Winston Peters, seen here listening to the drinks menu being read, this week made the surprising announcement of ending the Irish ambassador posting of Trevor Mallard early and replacing him with a trained diplomat. Peters claimed that the carnival was over, specifically mentioning that this was a type of retribution for Jacinda supporters, which is a clear dog whistle to his most conspiracy-fueled followers whose hatred of the former Prime Minister could power the sun. Said Peters, "We need to stop putting inexperienced politicians in decision-making seats. They're easy to manipulate. They make mistakes and seem to be ego-driven at the expense of others." Oh, hey, Prime Minister! Officials at the Ministry of the Environment warned the government that reneging on climate change commitments could create a domino effect where the move was used to justify larger countries' moves to pull out of climate change commitments and harm a number of our priority international relationships. New Zealand has so far failed to lock down steps to meet our obligations under the Paris Climate Accord, which has been used by politicians David Seymour and Winston Peters to scaremonger about a possible $10 billion price tag for being part of a unilateral effort to not completely destroy the planet we all live on. That price, though, is a worst-case scenario from doing exactly what the government is doing now and not sorting the deal, said Climate Change Minister Simon Watts, seen here wondering if anyone else thinks he looks like a hobbit with shorter hair. "We want to avoid a domino effect. But when everything's under a foot of water and storms are increasing in intensity and occurrence, dominoes tend to float anyway." This week saw the opposition overtake the coalition in the number of members' bills passed into law this term, with the passing of two very different bills. Tracy McClellan's bill, which allows victims of violent crimes to provide evidence in trials without needing to be in the room with perpetrators, passed unanimously, while Camilla Bellich's bill to make it illegal to stop staff from discussing their salaries was passed with the help of National, while ACT's Parmjeet Palmer, seen here finding out that she can't just throw opposition MPs into jail on a whim, could be heard in the corner screaming, "But workers shouldn't have rights, what do you think you're doing?" The government this week changed tact on their local water done well policy, no longer claiming the cost benefits would be cheaper than the previous Three Waters model begun under the previous government as the law passed its third reading in Parliament. While the coalition has claimed the changes were to ensure local decisions on water infrastructure were possible, Hamilton East MP Ryan Hamilton said the quiet part out loud by going, "Goodbye, co-governance." Labour's spokesperson on local government, Tangi Utakiri, seen here checking if you're enrolled to vote in this year's local body elections, said, "Is that the dude who got into politics as a Destiny Church member because he opposed his mum's stance on legalising prostitution and went to a meeting full of conspiracy theorists who tried to threaten his co-workers with execution over 20-minute city conspiracies? I'm sure he's the balanced voice of reason then." Documents this week revealed that David Seymour ran his response to the UN over the treatment of Māori past Paul Goldsmith, seen here showing the proper pose to take on your knees before writing a hagiography on millionaires to make them look good and humanise them before sending the email. Goldsmith, in his role as Treaty Negotiations Minister, had been looped in early in the process and ended with email messages saying, "Goldie is happy for us to send it." The letter itself called the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples presumptive, condescending and wholly misplaced, without a single sense of irony from the man who uses his whakapapa links he discovered on a reality TV show as a shield to justify bills, which have led to some of the most mobilised responses the country has ever seen. A former New Zealand soldier was, for the first time ever, convicted this week on charges of espionage after a guilty plea in military court. The soldier, who was directly involved with the creation of a far-right neo-Nazi organisation, pleaded guilty to 3 charges of attempted espionage, dishonestly accessing a computer system and possessing objectionable material understood to be the live stream of the Christchurch terror attack. Said the Foreign Affairs Minister, does he need a job when he's out? As the coalition looks set to introduce a raft of changes to local government, Whakatane councillor Nando Tantros, seen here giving off cool uncle vibes, has called their proposed list of essential services bizarre since it omits roles currently required under the local government legislation as core services. These include cemeteries, public toilets, community safety, animal control, road safety, building consents, food safety, liquor licensing, gambling premises monitoring, resource consenting, annual plan making, annual reports, long-term plan processes, audits, bylaw reviews, noise control, and health and safety compliance. Said Local Government Minister Simon Watts, seen here wondering what a local board actually is. Yeah, but speed bumps annoy people, and that's what's important. Enforcing a rates cap makes perfect sense if you ignore all those other things that councils do. This week, the New Zealand Defence Force played host to the US Air Force's largest plane, the C-5M Super Galaxy. The Super Galaxy landed at Auckland's Whenuapai Air Force Base, delivering the first components for the new C-130J Hercules flight simulator. The plane itself has a wingspan of almost 68 metres and can carry just over 381 tonnes. Said a spokesperson for the US Air Force, this plane has plenty of room for crew. There's 3 lavatories and galleys with ovens and a fridge, and enough room for us to head to the McDonald's drive-thru and pick up President Trump's dinner order on our way back. And finally, last weekend, the 2 Chris's were seen in crisis mode together when asked on stage to dance at an Indian independence event. While Prime Minister Christopher Luxon said he was too busy to take a call of coalition countries against the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, he did say he enjoys a jump to the far right when on stage. Said a spokesperson for the Coalition of the Willing, "We know the contribution New Zealand can make in this effort to stop military aggression. We'll just send them this video and make sure that they leave through embarrassment of being anywhere near a coalition that allows its members to do this to themselves." Right, and that's it for this week's The News. Thanks again for all the support this week. Look after yourself, live long, prosper, and we'll catch you all next time. You know what? I don't even have to close off other than saying thanks to all the guests for being here tonight. Thank you for the viewers. Feel free to hit that like button if you're still sticking around for the 1 minute. Well, it's 9 o'clock now, so BHN's kicking off. So go watch BHN. Thank you very much for tonight, guys, and we will catch you all next time.